Chair of Education Working Group, Mr. Iwan Shahril. Co-Chair of Education Working Group, Mr. Anindito Aditomo. Education Working Group delegates from G20 member countries and special invitees, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be invited to the second G20 Education Working Group meeting to welcome you all to this momentous event as part of our collaborative effort in recovering and reimagining global education from the great impact imposed on all of us by this pandemic. I am very, very touched to know that the idea of gotong royong as a value we hold dear as Indonesians resonated with such key delegates during the previous meeting last March. And with this in mind, I strongly believe that transformation through collaboration is the key towards what we aim to achieve a better and more sustainable future with quality education for all. Now, the pandemic has underlined great urgency in the need to change our systems of learning to solve the issues of the learning crisis. We learned a few things from this pandemic. We learned, first and foremost, the dangers of inequity in education. We learned also the limits of online learning, as we've seen in the learning loss that we have quantified and measured, not just in Indonesia, but in many countries around the world. We have also learned at the consequences of what happens psychologically to children during online learning. The risks are very, very big, but we also learned a few interesting positive things about the pandemic. The first is that the level of technological adoption, because teachers, principals, students, parents were forced to use technology during this time, it has accelerated technological adoption in our school and our education system in ways that we could never enforce as a government, in ways that we could never teach and organize as a government. And this is an opportunity that we also have to take advantage of. And then the last learning, for at least from Indonesia, one of the most important things is the resilience of students, the resilience of teachers during the time of crisis, which is greatly inspiring. Now allow me to talk to you a little bit about some of the accelerated reforms that we are doing in Indonesia as a result of the pandemic. The first and foremost is assessment, national assessment. If you cannot measure something, then it cannot improve. Indonesia is one of the countries that has wholeheartedly removed high-stakes testing from its lower and middle education system. The only high-stakes test left is entry to universities. There will be no more high-stakes testing before that. Not only that, we are one of the first few countries to have completely removed content-based subjects from national assessment and moved, very much similar to PISA, into a literacy and numeracy framework. We did this because we would like to align ourselves internationally with global goals of literacy and numeracy, and also be able to measure the delta and how we progress as a benchmark to other countries. We are also one of the first countries to actually, within the national assessment, have added criterias such as school safety that encapsulate many, many dimensions of school learning, not just behaviors in class, but also topics related to sexual violence, bullying, and tolerance. This is one of the biggest innovations we've done in Indonesia, and now we have surveyed hundreds of thousands of schools and millions of teachers all across Indonesia, and now we have one of the biggest big databases, big data sets that is able to be analyzed per school across multiple dimensions, not just numeracy and literacy. In terms of teacher training, I would say the biggest push that we have done is to focus first and foremost on teacher leaders. Our Guru Penggerak program is a regeneration of the next generation of leaders, of principals in our school. And the biggest change in terms of approach to training and selection is that we moved from simple, specific, tangible pedagogy skill sets, we actually moved towards mindsets and focused on the most important mindsets, such as lifelong learning, student-centered learning, and the ability for teachers to enact change. So our Guru Penggerak program is much closer akin to a transformational leadership engine program as opposed to a specific teacher training program. And we did this intentionally because teachers with the right mindset can become great leaders and move other teachers towards continuous learning. The final mindset of what we're always looking for is that ability to take risks. We want the leaders of our educational institutions to have risk tolerance, to enable them to try new things and innovate constantly. And not everything has to work when you're innovating. Failure is part of that learning process. And that is why emancipated learning becomes such an important principle right now. Now, we are gathered here today to discuss the 4 themes: universal quality education, digital technology and education, solidarity and partnerships, and the future of work post-COVID-19. On the theme of universal quality education, one of the biggest transformations we did was how we managed the subsidy program from the central government to the regions, where before it was very uniform. And we created, the first time in our history, a very affirmative policy whereby we are discriminating to the areas that have the highest cost of living, areas that have the lowest access must receive more funding than the areas in the urban centers and areas that are more well-to-do. This is one of the biggest things that we fought for in the administration and succeeded in making that happen. We also added a huge amount of flexibility in what principals can do with that money, because the pandemic has highlighted the urgent needs that they may use that funding for. But also, we firmly believe that the people in the schools, the leaders of the schools and the teachers, the principals and the teachers, are the ones that know what to spend that money best on, because every school is very different. We've also dramatically expanded our scholarship program and also expanded it to include higher price points for universities that have higher ratings, so that any talented student from any village in Indonesia can aspire and dream as far as they can to get into the most expensive programs, the best rated programs, such as medical school, which is previously outside of the scope, out of the range of our scholarship program. On the digital front, which was my previous background, we are doing many, many things that has never been tried before. The first thing we've done is actually build a world-class technology team that serves the Ministry of Education. We have about 260 software engineers, product managers, data engineers, and designers and researchers, who are all from the private sector, who have come and joined us on our mission to build super apps for education. Unlike most conventional knowledge, which is more excited about the prospect of online learning and directly to kids, that is not our focus in building these platforms. Our platforms are predominantly focusing on enabling and empowering the principal and the teachers in order to unleash their potential. We're building a platform where teachers can share and learn from each other as much as they can learn from us in the ministry. We're building platforms where they can take modular courses at their own time to level up their capability. We're creating an e-commerce platform that enables all schools to buy what they need, when they need, with the most number of options and with the most efficient price points. We are building a variety of toolkits so that the principal can plan their annual budget in a much more efficient way and dramatically reduce the administrative burdens that they have. We're also building platforms that are now matching between industry and universities to allow them to find co-funded projects that they can meet, where a professor online can meet a industry manager in order to discuss a particular research project, and will get funded. The digital layer, we see this as not as a way of replacing schools and going directly to students, but to empower the teachers and principals, the people in the system of education, in order to expand their potential, the ability to access so much media. And that is why we're pushing one of the biggest drives right now for the increase of laptops across Indonesia, ever in the history of Indonesia. In terms of solidarity and partnerships, Organisasi Penggerak, the first time ever we're designing a grant program, because we realize that a lot of this tacit knowledge in education exists within organizations working in the education space. So we are here, we release the program to fund those organizations and see for them to prove themselves at the ability to transform schools. One of our other flagship products on programs on solidarity and partnerships is a matching fund. One of the most successful ways of incentivizing industry to participate in higher education, what we call the matching fund. An extremely simple program whereby industry that funds research within our institutions will receive that same amount of funding from the government, as long as it falls within some key strategic sectors, which are quite broad. We have been oversubscribed 4 or 5 times after this and completely taken aback at how much industry is actually willing to fund research and do joint programs in universities when the government incentive program is so simple to understand and is exciting for them. And for the future of work post-COVID-19, we are launching a huge amount of transformation in higher education to do this. The first and foremost, something that's never been done in our history, is to enable 3 semesters out of 8 semesters of an undergraduate education outside of campus and outside of their major. Now, this is one of the biggest, most radical changes we've done in higher education. We've allowed essentially students to go out and take internships for a semester, or they can take an independent study project, they can launch a startup, or they can do a social entrepreneurship program, whether teach in the regions or do a poverty alleviation program, a huge amount of menu of activities that they can do and receive full credit in their universities. So this is the great unbundling of higher education that we are trying to accelerate. We see the future and we want to race towards it instead of just playing catch up. So this is one of the biggest programs we have. And to support this also, we are also this year launching one of the largest praktisi mengajar programs, which are practitioner teachers. We're providing funding to bring tens of thousands of practitioners to come to universities and teach. These are a few things, I think, of initiatives that I believe are even further accelerated by the pandemic and has given governments all across the world the opportunity and the mandate to accelerate the changes that we see, but sometimes are hard to achieve under normal circumstances. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I strongly believe that the forum's consensus during this meeting on the Education Working Group and Education Minister's Declaration will serve as a critical milestone in our journey to recover education as a foundation to achieve a sustainable future. And on that note, I wish all of you a successful meeting and fruitful discussion. Let us strengthen our collaboration in realizing quality education, achieving a better tomorrow for our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Makarim. Thank you so much for making the time and for your remarks. It is amazing to see about the transformation that has been going on in Indonesia.